Hey everyone, it's time to talk about Cornerstone Ogerpon because it has found its way back into the meta and it has allowed certain decks to thrive, and by certain decks I mean of course the Absol Box deck piloted by Tord, who ended up winning the Las Vegas Regionals this past weekend. So it's definitely a card that you should be prepared for. Obviously there's this psychology behind, if Cornerstone does good, people are going to tech for it, but if I know you're going to tech for it, then I'm just not going to play it. So just to be safe, I'd say you should just go ahead and tech for it, include that one copy of a card to deal with this matchup if you expect it in your area. Obviously, it's kind of different at a local level versus like a regional level, you know what I mean? Like, over a regional, you're going to play 8, 9, 10, 14 rounds. You're kind of bound to hit this matchup at some point. And certain decks automatically kind of just lose if you have no counter to this. We kind of saw that play out in the grand finals. Liam managed to take a game which was very, very impressive, but you could tell how unfavorable it was playing Zoroark into Cornerstone and really having no actual answer to the card. So today I kind of want to just show some of the options out there that are currently being used in decks to kind of deal with this card, and kind of explain which decks right now are kind of having a hard time against this card specifically. And again, it kind of varies from like a regional level to just going to your locals to play. If you're playing in your locals and you don't expect anyone to bring this card, then there's really no point of teching for it. But if you expect to see this card even whatsoever, I highly recommend that you at least know what your answer to this card is. And right now, looking at the meta, we've got a lot of different really good decks in the format, I would say. These decks right here are kind of the decks that struggle with the card the most, I feel like, out of the meta relevant decks. Gholdengo obviously is the biggest one. Its main attacker in the deck is clearly, Gholdengo. You can also attack with Soul Rock, but you're not really doing enough damage to kind of deal with it because a lot of times Cornerstone also plays Okidogi, so you theoretically could move that damage back. So it's important to kind of have an answer if you're playing Gholdengo, just to make sure that you don't kind of auto lose. If you do have an answer, a lot of times you can really flip that matchup and make it very favorable for Gholdengo. So it's definitely a matchup to be prepared for with Gholdengo. Same thing with Charizard, Grimmsnarl, and Zoroark. These are all big attackers that all have abilities and kind of struggle into the matchup. Charizard kind of has an answer right now with the Chi-Yu. I'll kind of get into that a little bit more here. Grimmsnarl, same thing. You play Frostlass, you play Okidogi. You could kind of just work around that and deal with Cornerstone. And then Zoroark, we kind of saw it play out on stream. There's really no true answer unless you specifically tech for the card. And of course, looking at the results from Las Vegas this past regional, you can see right here that Mega Absol did very good. It did phenomenal. We had 3 in the top 16, one person bubble out at 17th place. And as you can see, there's plenty just in the top 64 alone. This deck definitely thrived. This right here is all the Mega Absols that use Cornerstone. So yeah, you can see that a lot of people were prepared to add it back. They kind of felt like people weren't respecting it, and it definitely paid off. Looking at some of the tech cards here to kind of deal with Cornerstone, one of the big ones for Zoroark specifically, pretty much the main one I would say, is going to be Okidogi EX. We didn't see it played too much in Zoroark, but it definitely is kind of your answer to it if you really want to have an answer to it. Obviously the downside here is you kind of run that risk of starting with a 2-prizer with a 3 retreat cost in the active spot. And there are certain matchups, most matchups, where you're not wanting to use this card just because it does have that 3 energy cost as well. But it is definitely a good answer because you do 130 plus 130 more if this Pokemon is poisoned. It's obviously really easy to poison it because you have the Petron EX. So you can pretty quickly get it poisoned and start doing damage, and you're able to one-shot Cornerstone even with a Bravery Charm. So it's kind of nice to have an option that one-shots the card. That way you don't have any Okidogi shenanigans or Penny and stuff like that. It's really nice to just kind of have an outright answer to the card. And obviously you have 250 HP, so it's not really one-shotting you back either. So it's a very nice option. And the best part about it with Zoroark is that it is just a 1-card inclusion. You don't really need to add anything else. You can just throw this 1 card in the deck, and now you have an answer for Cornerstone. One of the main options to deal with Cornerstone with Gholdengo is Mega Mawile EX. You do have 2 attacks. The first one is Gobble Down. You're doing 80 damage for each prize card you've taken. So this can be solid if you're able to take some early prize cards. You're able to do some pretty big damage. Let's say you take 2 prize cards, you're hitting for 160. That's pretty nice. You're able to kind of deal with it, I wouldn't say pretty easily, but you definitely have an option to it because it's also not going to be one-shotting Mega Mawile. You do also have the Huge Bite attack, which does 260 damage. This will be one-shotting Cornerstone, and it obviously only does 30 damage if that Pokemon has any damage on it, which it probably won't. So you could take the time to slowly power this thing up and start hitting for 260. That way you're kind of just one-shotting Cornerstone. That's probably what you want to do with this card. Gobble Down is obviously an option, but I think it just makes more sense to go ahead and build up to the 260 at times. Kind of just depends on the board state and how things are going, but Mega Mawile, definitely a good option. Same thing, it is a 3 prize liability. You do run the risk of starting it in matchups where you don't want to, but you do also play Turtles in this deck, so you can get rid of it. Definitely a good option, and again, it's just a 1 card inclusion to deal with it. We've also got the Mega Lucario. This one is not as popular, but it definitely is another answer to Cornerstone. Same thing, this is being ran in Goldango specifically. This here is a 2 card inclusion instead of just 1 card, but the benefit of running this instead is that you could just kind of keep that 1 prize board state, have the Riolu out, and then whenever you're powered up and ready to attack, that's when you evolve into Mega Lucario. So you don't run the risk of starting with a big 2 or 3 prize Pokemon. You have the ability to basically choose when you want to attack and kind of power this thing up and slowly build it up, and then once you're ready to deal with Cornerstone, go ahead and evolve it and knock it out. So definitely a very solid option. It is a little bit more of a commitment. You're running 2 extra cards, not a card that you're typically going to use in a lot of other matchups. I guess you technically could, but I don't really see matchups where you would want to use it aside from dealing with Cornerstone. So yeah, that's kind of the downside of this one. You're taking up 2 card slots. So it's basically just a 58 card deck with a 2 card counter. But the benefit is you can basically keep a 1 prize board state until you're ready to attack. As far as some of the other decks that struggle a little bit with Cornerstone, Charizard's definitely up there because you primarily play Pokemon with abilities. Right now, a lot of Charizards are playing like the Chi-Yu as a solid 1 prize attacker. The problem is you're not really one-shotting, you're not really doing enough damage, and you're only doing extra damage when you had a Pokemon previously knocked out. The benefit of Charizard though right now is that we are getting the new Moltres card, or we did get it recently with Phantasmal Flames, and this overall I think is going to be a better attacker than Chi-Yu. I think we're going to see that pivot into Moltres from Chi-Yu in a lot of these decks, because you're essentially hitting for 110 every single turn. You don't have to get knocked out previously, so you're hitting for 110 if the other Pokemon is an EX Pokemon, so you have the ability to just power this up. It's just 1 fire energy. Really in general, this is gonna be a pretty solid card. I think it's a basic Pokemon, 1 energy attachment. You're hitting for 110 on EX Pokemon. I think in general it's gonna be a good card for this deck. You can deal with stuff like, you know, Teal Mask Ogerpon, which is nice. So I think it's definitely gonna be a better answer to Cornerstone. Obviously it doesn't solve it necessarily, but it makes it a lot better. The other one that struggles with it a little bit is gonna be Grimmsnarl, because you can't really attack with Shadow Bullet. That being said, I think you do just have options, you have answers, you just have to play smart. It's definitely kind of a tricky one, I feel like, but I definitely think if you're playing Grimmsnarl and you're struggling with Cornerstone, you gotta lean heavier into the Monkey Dory and Frostlass strategy. I think with Monkey Dory, if you can just set up more Monkey Dories than them, I think you're able to just kind of move more damage. You know, have maybe 1 Frostlass on the board, have 3 Monkey Dories, and just kind of play a Monkey Dory Frostlass kind of deck for that matchup. You don't really necessarily need Grimmsnarl. You could go ahead and get a Morgrem on board, so you can hit for 60 and do that extra damage to go ahead and knock it out, but you definitely have to play more into your single prizes with this deck, rather than kind of relying on Grimmsnarl and hoping to find a way around it. So those are kind of my thoughts on Cornerstone and where it is right now, how to deal with it. I do think moving forward we will see less Cornerstone because people will be more prepared for it. But that being said, it's just a revolving cycle of people aren't going to respect it, it's going to do well, it's just going to go back and forth. So better to be prepared, I feel like. I think you can, in most decks, sacrifice 1 to 2 cards to kind of deal with a matchup that you otherwise would lose. And just kind of looking at results in general, you kind of see the people that didn't prepare for it just kind of outright losing those matchups. It doesn't want to be, you don't want to be that person, you know what I mean? You want to make sure you're prepared. That being said, let me know in the comments what you guys think of Cornerstone in the meta. I know a lot of people probably miss canceling Cologne. I know I do. I think that would go crazy in this meta, but unfortunately it did rotate, so we don't have it anymore. But thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.